Okay, let's set the scene. It's Ananthapuram, May 8th, 2025. Imagine this. Scorching sun, winds kicking up dust.
Yeah.
But there's something else too. A movement. People talking about Save RDT.
Mm-hmm.
And the big question, the one we're really digging into today, is can this organization, RDT, actually be saved?
It's quite something, that groundswell you mentioned. Really tells you how deeply RDT, that's the Rural Development Trust, is embedded there.
Right.
This isn't some new group. We're talking 1969, Vicente Ferrer, a Spanish missionary, and his wife Ana Ferrer, they came with this huge, almost audacious vision
Which one?
to help this really underserved part of India and Anthapuram not just survive, but actually thrive. And not through handouts, but through, real deep change.
And that change, it wasn't overnight. We're talking, what, over 50 years?
Exactly, half a century of solid work. In Ananthapuram, also neighboring Kurnool.
And their fingers were on a lot of pies, right?
Yeah.
Education, healthcare.
Oh, yeah. Education, health, empowering women, trying to make farming work in that tough climate. They weren't just applying Band-Aids. They were like building the foundations of the community.
Which makes the current situation even more worrying. This really impactful organization is now facing, well, a crisis. Bureaucracy, money troubles, maybe some politics mixed in.
That seems to be the picture, yes. A perfect storm, almost.
So to really get why this matters, we need to understand Anthapuram itself first, don't we?
Absolutely. Picture this. It's the second driest district in the whole country.
Wow. Second driest.
Yeah. So your main livelihood, farming things like ground nuts, millets, it all depends on the monsoon, which is unpredictable, to say the least.
So historically, that means high poverty, difficulty getting basic schooling, healthcare.
That's been the reality for generations. Huge challenges. And that's the context RDT walked into back in '69 saying, okay, we want to help change this.
And they really went for it. Education, for instance. You mentioned over 100 schools.
Over 100 schools and programs, yeah. Think about the impact on just getting kids in the door and keeping them there, especially girls.
Right. Girls often face extra barriers.
For sure. And RDT saw that, reducing dropouts, boosting literacy. It's been huge in the areas they work. They understood it wasn't just about classrooms.
It had to connect with the community.
Precisely. Make it relevant, accessible. Prioritizing girls wasn't just, ticking a box. It was a strategic investment in the whole community's future. That's a key insight, really. Targeting that one barrier unlocks so much else.
And then healthcare. I mean, in remote villages, getting to a doctor. That must have been incredibly difficult before RDT.
A distant dream for many. So RDT built hospitals, yes, but also clinics. And crucially, these mobile health units.
Taking the care to the people.
Exactly, reaching villages miles from anywhere. It wasn't just treating sickness, it was trying to build up preventative care, too. It's about basic fairness, isn't it? Healthcare access shouldn't depend on your postcode.
Definitely not. And another area, you mentioned women's empowerment. Those self-help groups sound like they're really transformative.
Game changers, absolutely. Imagine women maybe with very little economic power before suddenly getting skills, getting a support network.
And starting businesses.
Yeah.
Tailoring, dairy farming, things like that.
All sorts of small enterprises. And it's not just the income, though that's vital. It's their confidence, their voice in the family, in the village. A whole new sense of agency.
Yeah, you can see how economic power and social standing would be linked there.
Totally intertwined. When women earn, families eat better, kids stay in school longer, women have more say. RDT provided the spark, the structure, but the women ran with it. That collective energy is powerful.
And they even got involved in the farming itself.
Yeah.
Given the drought issues.
Yes, tackling it head on. Introducing irrigation, promoting organic methods, pushing for crops that could actually handle the conditions better.
That's thinking long term, not just relief, but resilience.
Exactly, and you see how it all connects. Better farming means more food security, stronger local economies, less reliance on unpredictable weather or outside help. They gave farmers tool and knowledge. That integrated thinking was key.
And I understand they also had significant programs for people with disabilities.
Very much so. And the focus was always on inclusion, on celebrating abilities, not just focusing on limitations.
So scholarships, opportunities, making sure everyone felt part of the community.
That's the core of it. Sending a message that everyone belongs, everyone contributes. It's about dismantling barriers, fostering real belonging, a social justice issue, fundamentally.
So you paint this picture of an incredibly vital, deeply rooted organization, which makes the unfolding crisis, starting maybe early 2025, so alarming.
It does. There were signs, rumblings.
And then that social media post.
Yeah.
From @iPeridalisrium on April 30th. That seemed to really crystallize the fears.
It brought it out into the open, yes. And then you had local MLAs petitioning the chief minister, Chandrababu Naidu, basically saying, we need help. RDT is sinking.
The fact that politicians got involved directly like that, it shows how serious it was perceived locally.
Definitely. Not just an internal issue, but something with major regional impact.
So what are the causes? It sounds like a mix of things hitting at once. Funding, first off.
Yeah, funding seems to be a big one. They've historically relied a lot on international donors, especially from Spain, because of Vicente Ferrer's roots.
But global economies change, donor priorities shift.
Exactly. That bedrock wasn't as solid anymore. It's a risky spot for any NGO, being too reliant on one type of funding, especially international funding. You're vulnerable.
Then there were the regulations. India's FCRA, the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act.
Right. Intended for transparency, making sure foreign money is used properly, which is important, of course.
But the process itself, the paperwork, the audits, can be tough.
It can be incredibly burdensome, especially for a large, complex operation like RDT. Small administrative slip-ups could potentially freeze their ability to even receive the funds they do have lined up.
That's a tricky balance. Accountability versus operational reality.
It's a constant challenge for NGOs in India and elsewhere. How do you ensure accountability without stifling the actual work?
And you mentioned local politics potentially playing a role.
There's a suggestion that some local leaders might lean more towards government-run programs, perhaps prioritizing them over established NGOs like RDT.
Even if the NGO has a longer track record or wider reach in certain areas?
Potentially. It highlights that tension that can exist. Ideally, you want collaboration, right? Government and NGOs working together, playing to their strengths. Synergy is better than competition.
And just the sheer scale of RDT's operations, managing all those schools, clinics, projects across districts, that's a huge logistical task, especially if resources are tight.
Absolutely. It requires a strong administrative backbone, consistent funding. When money gets scarce, it can affect service quality, retaining good staff. It can become a difficult cycle.
Which brings us to the community's response, the Save RDT movement. It didn't just stay as whispers.
Not at all. By May 2025, #SaveRDT was really taking off online.
I saw a post from @ChicagoBachi around May 4th, pushing an online petition.
Yes, that seemed to be a catalyst, aimed at policymakers in Delhi. The speed of that digital mobilization was pretty amazing.
Shows the connection people feel.
Absolutely. It shows they see RDT not just as an organization, but as their organization, and they understand what's at stake.
And it wasn't just clicks and shares, right? There were actual protests.
Yeah, grassroots action. Farmers, students, women's groups out in Ananthapuram, leaders talking directly to the state government.
A unified message, basically. RDT is our lifeline.
That's powerful. When a community rises up like that, it's not defending some external charity. It's protecting something they feel ownership of. That's incredibly significant.
It really makes you pause and think why this specific struggle in Ananthapuram matters on a national level.
Because Ananthapuram isn't unique in facing these challenges. Across rural India, access to good education, reliable healthcare, decent livelihoods, it's still a huge issue for millions.
And organizations like RDT often fill the gaps, where government services maybe don't reach or aren't enough.
They're often crucial bridges, and you see this contrast, don't you? India talks about its economic growth, booming cities.
Right.
But the reality for many in rural areas can be very different. RDT's work highlights those inequalities and the vital role NGOs play in trying to address them, making sure development isn't just an urban phenomenon.
Think about that farmer you mentioned worried about educating his daughter.
Yeah.
Or a woman having to walk miles for basic health care.
These are the daily struggles RDT has been working on for decades. If an organization with that kind of impact is allowed to fail, what message does that send about our national priorities? About inclusive growth?
It forces you to ask what progress really means, doesn't it? Is it just GDP numbers, or is it about the well-being and opportunity for everyone, everywhere?
Exactly. RDT's crisis makes us confront that question.
Okay, so if things are that critical, what's the path forward? How could RDT potentially be saved? Funding seems like the immediate pressure point.
Yeah, definitely. They need to diversify, urgently. Move beyond just relying on those traditional international donors.
So things like crowdfunding, partnering with Indian companies maybe, government grants.
All of the above. Building support within India from individuals, from corporates with social responsibility programs, exploring government schemes that's key for long-term stability.
And the regulatory side, the FCRA issues.
That needs a look too. Finding that balance we talked about. The rules need to ensure accountability, yes, but they shouldn't cripple effective, legitimate organizations doing vital work. Maybe streamlining things, clearer guidance.
Supporting, not stifling.
That should be the aim.
And building on that local support is crucial too, right? The community is already there, but getting more formal recognition, maybe integration from the state and central governments.
That would be huge. Validation, potential funding streams, better coordination. Government and NGOs working in partnership can achieve so much more, recognizing each other's strengths.
And just getting the word out nationally, #SaveRDT is a start, but it needs more amplification.
Absolutely. Media, influencers, anyone with a platform. Highlighting the real impact, the decades of work, the human cost if it disappears. That creates pressure.
Chief Minister Naidu has apparently promised to look into it, which is positive.
It's a welcome sign, definitely. But the clock is ticking. As of today, May 8th, the situation is still very much on edge. Public awareness can keep that pressure on.
Because ultimately, this isn't just about an organization or funding streams. It's about people, the individuals whose lives were changed.
Exactly. Those stories are the most powerful evidence.
Like Lakshmi, the single mother in Kadiri you mentioned, starting a tailoring business through a self-help group.
Yes, now employing others, kids in college. RDT gave her that pathway. It shows how they empower people to lift themselves, their families, out of poverty.
Or Ravi from Guntakal, the young man with a disability who got a scholarship for engineering.
A perfect example of their commitment to inclusion. Opening doors that might have stayed shut, letting talent flourish, believing everyone deserves a chance.
And Savitri in Pinokonda, whose husband got treatment at an RDT hospital, saving them from financial ruin, and now she volunteers for them.
That shows the deep connection, the gratitude. It highlights that RDT provides a real safety net, essential healthcare people rely on. These aren't just anecdotes, they represent thousands.
So, looking at the big picture for India, RDT's fight really brings home that need to make sure progress isn't just happening in cities. Rural India can't be left behind.
It's fundamental. And RDT's model, community-driven, focused on sustainability, it's something others could learn from, couldn't they? Both NGOs and government.
That partnership idea again.
Yes. It's not just about service delivery. It's about empowering communities to lead their own development. That ownership is key for anything to last.
So, trying to save RDT, it's more than saving an NGO. It's about valuing the work being done on the ground, isn't it? Recognizing those unsung heroes in rural communities.
It really speaks to what kind of country India wants to be. One that supports those lifting up the most vulnerable, ensuring a fairer future for everyone.
So, as you've been listening to this deep dive, just take a moment. Think about what we discussed. If an organization like RDT, with this history, this impact, can face collapse, what does that mean for rural development across India?
Which leads us to a final thought, perhaps. As India strides forward, will it make the conscious choice to really back the organizations working tirelessly on the front lines of inequality, ensuring growth reaches everyone? Or will these vital lifelines for rural communities be allowed to fray?
If this has resonated with you, if you feel moved to do something, there are ways to get involved. You can look for that online petition search, #SaveRDT. You'll likely find links, maybe from posts like that one by at Chicago Bachi. Spread the word yourself. Use the hashtag, let people know this is happening. If you can, consider donating directly to RDT through their official channels.
Every bit helps.
And maybe even reach out to your own elected officials. Let them know this matters. Because the story in Anantapur, the fate of RDT, it's still being written right now, May 8th, 2025. And what happens next really depends on collective action.